We're going to be talking about the law today. Romans chapter 7 is about the law. When you walk down the gospel in our 6 moves of the gospel, and we have that on one of these cards. It's also in the field guide, page 129. But it says, God created and owns all things. That's the first point. The second point, God has expectations of those he created. That's the law. And you've got to talk about the law. If you don't talk about the law, then why would they need Jesus? A lot of times when their marriage is crumbling, or maybe they're addicted to drugs, and we want Jesus, we want to share Jesus. Like, yeah, Jesus can help you. Well, they're going to add Jesus to the junk of their life unless they realize they've sinned against a holy God. That's more important than fixing their marriage, because guess what? They become a Christian. Suffering doesn't get eliminated in one's life. It may fix their marriage, but the bottom line issue is that they have broken God's law. That's the issue that I want to talk about, because it's really crucial, essential, as we're declaring Jesus, that we make sure that's part of the gospel presentation. The most natural response to God is to try to appease him, try to make him happy by keeping the law, staying on his good side and his good graces. That's what we do toward anyone who's in authority. We try to stay out of trouble, win favor. When you work for somebody, it's natural to want to live up to their expectations. Just tell me what you want from me. Tell me the expectations. Give me a job description and watch me meet it. Maybe I'll exceed it, right? But make it clear. And generally things go better for our life when we work to achieve it, when we stay within the boundaries. Now, when the Jews came out of Egypt, God was rescuing them from slavery, moving them to the promised land. On the way, he gave them the law. It's his holy expectations for people of his choosing. It's like, if I'm going to be your God and you're going to be my people, here's what I expect. That's the law. And they're not suggestions. They are laws. They are laws. And we need to understand that. In fact, let me turn, before we get to Romans 7, I want to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 9, because it's important that you understand something about the law. Deuteronomy 6 says this. Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you. This is Moses talking. That you may do them in the land in which you are going over to possess it. That you may fear the Lord your God, you and your sons' sons, by keeping his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life and all your days, that your days may be long. There's the blessing. Hear therefore, O Israel, be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And then he goes on to say, put these commands everywhere. So as you lie down, you get up, you go by the wayside, you're going to see that. Don't miss it. Now turn to chapter 27 of Deuteronomy I want to give you a sense of how important, again, these laws are. Chapter 27, verse 26. Chapter 27 is laying out the curses that will come upon Israel for disobedience. Pretty important thing. And in verse 26, to sum the whole thing up, it says, "Cursed be anyone who does not confirm the words of this law," confirm, "by doing them." That's what it meant by confirm it. "And all the people shall say, Amen." It is true. That's what amen means. The Jews were later removed from the promised land because they chose to ignore God's law and to serve other gods. And 70 years would go by before they were able to come and return back to the land. Now, you can imagine people were pretty serious about the law and obeying the law after they came back. They had learned the lesson, and that's why synagogues were eventually constructed, so that the law of God could be studied outside the temple structure. The Pharisees who ran the synagogues represented, listen to me, a back to the Bible movement in that time. A back to the law, because that's what they called the Bible, the law, and the prophets. And anyway, the back to the law kind of summarizes the whole thing in Judaism. And so zealous they were about it that they even made extra laws around the laws so that they would protect the people of Israel from going back again. Now, if that sounds strange to you, we do that sort of thing in evangelical circles too. It's not necessarily bad. It's just when you start to add things and then it becomes legalistic. I mean, like the Bible prohibits drunkenness, right? In Ephesians 5:18. But some churches advocate total abstinence from alcohol in view of its damaging, its devastation that it can cause in families. It's not a bad thing to say that. The Bible prohibits sexual immorality, but some churches have specific guidelines to regulate interactions between the opposite sex. Okay? There are added rules to try to keep you from breaking the real rules, right? The Pharisees did not want to see their people fall into idolatry and apostasy again by abandoning the law. You can understand this zeal, right, when you hear those curses and you realize that they were exiled because of that. In fact, when you come to Galatians 3:10, that particular curse is reiterated in Galatians 3:10. And James says something similar in chapter 2, verse 10. He says, whoever keeps the whole law yet stumbles at one point has become guilty of all. Now, the natural response is to try to keep those laws, to be in favor with God. It's the way it works in the business world, in education. Win awards and crush the competition so that you can advance. That's our world, right? I mean, doesn't it feel good when people want you on the team? When they buy your products and your services above anything else? When your resume is packed with accomplishments, it does feel very good. But the hardest thing to understand about the Bible is Old Testament law. Because here's the thing. You can't meet it. No one can. Which then begs the question, then why is it there in the first place if we can't meet it? That's Romans 7. That's what Paul is trying to answer. So let me read now. Let's go to Romans chapter 7. I'm going to read first 13 verses. We're going to deal with verse 7 to 13. Or do you not know, brothers, for I'm speaking to those who know the law, that the law is binding on a person as long as he lives. Thus a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives. And if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is freed from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Likewise, my brothers, you have also died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. For while we were living in the flesh, our sinful passions, aroused by the law, were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. But now we have been released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we serve not under the old written code, but in the new way of the Spirit. Now our section. What then shall we say? Is the law sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been for the law, I would not have known sin. I would not have known what it is to covet if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. Apart from the law, sin lies dead. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. For sin, seizing opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. So, the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and righteous and good. Are you following this argument? Okay. Did that which is good then bring death to me? By no means. It was sin producing death in me that through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. I have entitled this message, Utterly Sinful. And you can see why. The law came in to make it clear that we're sinners, actually utterly sinful. Last week we talked about the three uses of the law, and I think it's important to clearly delineate. Theologians have tried to help us understand the use of the law in the Bible, and there are three uses. One, it reveals God and it reveals us. It reveals who God is, and in light of who God is, it reveals us. The second thing is it holds back lawlessness. So the law holds back sin in a sense, outwardly, not inwardly. Just like the laws of the land kind of restrain a little bit. The third use is once someone is converted, it becomes a path to please God. When Christ has fulfilled the law, it becomes a path to please God. Those are the three uses. We're going to look at just the first use. It's going to explain who God is. It's going to expose us, that we are utterly sinful. Because I break the law continually. Its demand must be satisfied. And the only way I'm ever going to be free from condemnation is through faith, listen to this, in Jesus Christ. That's the only way. Because faith unites me to Christ's life, death, and resurrection. So in that moment, his death becomes mine. He's dying for my sin. And his resurrection becomes mine. With all its righteousness becomes mine. That alone secures favor with God. So here again, what's the use of the law now? It's got to show me how utterly sinful I am. How does it do that? Number one, it exposes me. The law exposes me. That's what verses 7 and 8 are trying to say. Is the law sin? No. Yet if I had not known the law, I would not know sin. I would have not known what it is to covet. The law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin seizing opportunity produced all kinds of coveting. Okay, it exposes me. That question, is the law sin? I mean, just think about it. That's absurd. Is the law sin? The question makes no sense because the law, without law, there is no sin, right? Sin is missing the mark. Sin is breaking the law. When there is no law, there is no sin. Just like when you go past a piece of property and it says no trespassing on it. And if you decide to traverse across, you have broken the law. But if there ain't no sign there, no foul, no sin, go ahead. But where there's a law, there's sin. So you can't say, is the law sin? That makes no sense. The law sets the boundary. It marks out what is acceptable and unacceptable to God. And remember, the law, again, is that extension of who God is. That's why the psalmists will say, oh, how I love thy law. I love thy law. It's like saying, I love your ways, O God. I love all things about you. And you think, well, how can the psalmist say that if it's going to expose him as utterly sinful? Because once he's converted, it's the path to please God. But an encounter with the law is like an encounter with God. Oh, you're going to feel very exposed when you have an appearance of God. I immediately think of Peter before Jesus, where he says in Luke chapter 5, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. He finally recognizes this is the Son of God. He cannot do these kind of things and not be the Son of God. And in light of that, Peter just comes undone. Please depart from me. Because that's what happens when you come into contact with God, the Son of God. Or Isaiah, when he had that vision in chapter 6. When he had that vision of God on the throne, he says in Isaiah 6:5, "Woe is me, totally coming undone. I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips." He's a prophet. That's the cleanest thing on him. "I'm a man of unclean lips. I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." You see? An encounter with God is going to fully expose you. The law does similar things to us because it represents God's holiness. It exposes sin. That's why. And not just the outside, but the inside. Notice that Paul mentions one of the 10 commandments. What does he mention? Coveting. And coveting is the only commandment that is strictly internal. That's on purpose. To covet is to be consumed with desire for something that's not yours. You shall not covet, it says in Exodus 20:17, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Now, can you tell if I'm doing that? Not unless I act on it. Just the act of just coveting, that's an internal thing. I'm still breaking the law when I'm doing it, and God knows. And the Pharisees were known for this external obedience to the law or conformity to the law, but they weren't doing it internally. They weren't technically committing adultery, so they thought they were in the clear until Jesus said in Matthew 5:28 that even lusting in the heart breaks the commandment. Coveting. The law exposes us for the sinners that we are when the searchlight of truth is brought to bear on our thoughts and our desires. It says, sin, seizing opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of coveting, says Paul. It's like I had no idea. And I believe that means that exposed the whole nest of sin, like the whole nest of cockroaches underneath the floorboards. It's like they were always there, but until you pull that floorboard off and then they scatter everywhere when the light comes, you would never know, but they're there. When I was in Venezuela, we'd go into these hotels. They were nice and swept. They looked clean to me. But underneath the cloak of darkness, there's a lot of cockroaches that wandered around. And if you got up in the middle of the night and turned on the light, you found out. They scurried for cover. You see, the law of God has a necessary purpose of showing us the true filth within our soul. Because technically we look well ordered on the outside, but just pull up the floorboard. Just turn on the light. Let the light reveal and expose, and exposes how utterly sinful we are. It's one thing to say the outside is great, which we spend so much time making sure this is, just so. But the law exposes me for who I am. It exposes me. Number two, the law killed me. The law killed me. Verses 9 through 11. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. That very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. For sin, seizing opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. It killed me. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. What does it mean, the very commandment that promised life? I didn't think the commandment promised life because, John, you've been saying all along the commandments bring death, kills. But he says it promised life. If you were to look over in 2 Corinthians 3, verse 6 and 7, Paul says that the law kills, And it has a ministry of death. And it does. But so how does Paul say the commandment promised life? Well, he's going back to when it was given in the first place in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Listen to this. It promises blessing for those who obey. In verses 1 and 2 of chapter 28, Deuteronomy chapter 28, it says, "And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth." You're going to be in a good spot. "And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God." See, that's the promise of blessing. It's a promise of life. I think it's Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 15 says this. This is Moses. "See, I have set before you today," as the law is being given, "life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his rules, you shall live and multiply." See, that's what he's talking about. It promised life. It proved to mean death to me. But in a sense, there is a general blessing that comes to law-abiding citizens. I think we can at least say that. Things go better if you stay with your spouse. Stay true and faithful with your spouse. Things go better if you don't steal, but you actually earn your keep honestly. There's certain things, blessings coming. You can enjoy the blessing of the adherence to the law. Things generally go better. Also, Paul is saying that when he says that before the law came in, he was alive. What does he mean he was alive before the law came? It means he felt happy and holy. I'm in good standing. But when the commandment came, sin became clear and brought death. And again, if by life he has this false sense of happy and holy, death then means misery and dread. Misery and dread, the sentence of death looming over him. And I just think about some illustrations of this. Many Christian homeschool kids appear having it all put together, well behaved on the outside, but underneath can have rottenness. And once at college, away from parents, they dabble in sin, they get further down into sin, which brings about exposure. Death to the squeaky clean image. It was full of cockroaches. They couldn't see it. But as they progressed down in sin, it all became exposed. And when they came back from spring break, mom and dad then found out. You just feel the death to your persona and your well-curated, front. Because the law and some of the consequences that get exposed, it's a death to all of that. I think of gals who so badly want a relationship in high school and college that they find themselves in the arms of the wrong guy eventually. And they get pregnant. And there comes in a sense of like, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. Oh, how did I get here? And some will progress even deeper into sin. Instead of confessing, they'll go deeper and darker and kill the baby. And it just reveals the evil inside their own heart. The cockroach is down deep. They are utterly sinful. And that exposure is very difficult. But they want to keep the image, so they get deeper and deeper. They lie more and deeper in sin. Or guys who are exposed and their reputation killed when secrets get exposed. Usually it's sexual. Usually it's in pornography and the like. I think of guys like Harvey Weinstein, who appeared as a successful movie mogul producer until the law came breathing down his neck. He was finally exposed as a sensual pig, as he was, just a sexual predator and abuser. And it's like, there's the exposure. Now no one wants him around, right? It's like he can't even show his face anymore. But all that rottenness was there before everyone found out. It was all there. But now he got exposed. The law exposed him. The law killed him in that sense. How can people think of themselves as good when all these things are going on? Well, they excuse themselves until the law exposes them, kills them meaning pops their self-righteous bubble. The law exposes, it kills. Number 3, sin deceived me. It deceives us. Look at verse 11. For sin, seizing opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. You see, the law is not the problem. The law is holy, righteous, and good because it reflects the character of God. The problem is with me. I'm utterly sinful, and the law just exposes and then kills me. You expect, verse 10, the very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. You expect when you read verse 10 that Paul is going to say that the law deceived him. It promised life, but then it gave him death. But no, he says, no, it's the sin that deceived him. How does the sin deceive him? Well, I can venture to say a few things. I would say one, hearkening back to Genesis chapter 3, sin deceives by making sin appear attractive and beautiful. That's how it deceives. Like the fruit on that one tree was better than any other. It's like, I can't be satisfied with any other piece of fruit. It's got to be that tree. So Eve took the fruit. So did Adam. Or today, it deceives us into thinking that the world is, because of its achievement and creation and producing some exciting, beautiful things, and technology is on the rise, that somehow when you think of the future judgment, it seems ridiculous, absurd, medieval. Sin does that. It deceives us into thinking that all the great things of the world, they're judgment. It can't happen. No way. Things are so beautiful. The cities are teeming with life, and I just want to get out there and live it up. Attractive, beautiful. Sin deceives also by making us obsess over the outward conformity to the law. Just the outward. The Pharisees were only concerned about what people saw rather than what God saw. That's why, again, we have this specially curated image of ourselves that we put on social media, or we go into deeper sins just to cover up our tracks, further lies. It's only showing how awful we are. And Jesus said in Matthew 6:1, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you have your reward. That's all the reward you get. Because all you ever did it for was for other people to see. Jesus again in Matthew 5:20 says, I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and Pharisees who are concerned only about the outside, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. But sin deceives, making sure that we got the outside looking all good. But your reward here is on earth, because you do what you do only to appear well in front of others. So you strike poses, you hide the cockroaches within, and you descend deeper in sin. You're pretty on the outside, like what Jesus said, white painted tombstones. But God knows the rottenness of your heart. He knows what you keep hidden. You're utterly sinful. But sin deceives us, making it very attractive, making us only obsess over the outside, and then by getting us to misapply the beautiful doctrine of grace. And this is Romans chapter 6, when Paul says, well, where sin abounded, grace superabounded. There were people, perhaps, who said, well, then we should just sin. Let's sin all the more so the grace goes all the way to the top. It's licentiousness. Or antinomianism, which is like, doesn't matter. Grace is going to cover. It's the folks who are counting on their baptism as a child, the fact that they walked down an aisle to receive Jesus, signed a card, said a sinner's prayer, went to church as a child, prayed sometimes, feel warm feelings when they talk about God, and yet for the last 20 years, listen to me, the last 20 years they pursued their own course with little reference to God, and in no way have they come under his direction. That's this, sin deceives. By getting us to misapply the beautiful doctrine of God's grace, and then by making us think that God is unjust to ask for obedience. Deceives us into thinking that God is unjust to ask for obedience. I mean, if it's impossible for me to obey the law, and I will be judged at the end for it, and I'm going to fail, isn't God the one who's unjust? Do you see we've come full circle now? The law represents God, and now sin deceives us into thinking that the problem is God and not me. The problem is with God. It's the height of arrogance. I don't need to change, God does, if he exists at all. Do you see the problem? The problem is we are utterly sinful. Point number 4. Just like my title. I am utterly sinful. Verse 13 sums it up. Did that which is good then bring death to me? By no means. It was sin. The problem is this. Producing death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment we become sinful beyond measure. Utterly sinful. Because unless the law exposes me and kills my self-righteousness, I have no hope of being saved. You know why? Because sin deceives me into thinking that I'm perfectly fine, holy, and happy. I don't need anything. I'm the arbitrator of truth. I'm the one who decides right and wrong. I'm the one who will airbrush the imperfections I see in God. Arrogant fool. Arrogant fool. Repent while you still have time. The law is to humble and utterly expose you so that you are ready to hear the gospel of grace of Jesus Christ. Because one day the grace of God, his mercy, will come to an end. And if you continue to stiff-arm the offer of salvation, you will meet his wrath. Revelation chapter 6, verse 15 and 16 reads like this. It's at the end. The kings of the earth and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful, everybody, the who's who in the world. But then he goes on, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves among the rocks of the mountains, calling on the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? You and I are utterly sinful. We break the law, but there's more inside. There's more inside that's dark and filthy and cockroach infested. No amount of self-improvement is going to help. We need a miracle of God. And you know, he still is working miracles in people's lives, and he wants that to happen in your life. And you will never see that until you come to the end and say, I'm utterly sinful. I need help. Perfect. Then the law has done what it intended to do, to completely devastate us and humble us so that we see a great need and look up to a Savior. Believe even right now that God has provided for you in Jesus Christ. He loved you by sending Jesus. Don't think that he doesn't love you or he's playing a trick on you. No, he loves you. He has loved you by sending Jesus. Believe. There is still time to believe, but don't delay. Why don't you bow your heads?